what's up, everyone? Sam here, Wall Street Mastermind. I'm here today for another client interview, this time with our client Daniel, who recently, I guess it's been a couple months, but got his summer internship offer for summer 2020, and just want to get him to come on here and talk about his experience and share whatever advice he has with you guys to help you in your own process as well. So, Daniel, thank you for taking the time out of your day to be with us today. And why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, no problem. So happy to be here. Glad to take part. My name is Daniel. As of the time of this recording, I'm a junior. I just locked down my summer 2020 internship a couple months back. I go to University of Minnesota. I'm studying finance, kind of like everyone else does, but I just went through basically school, and I was a sophomore when I started getting interested in investment banking. I really found it was the best career for me to be optimistic about. That would give me the best outcomes in terms of kind of the goals that I had in the future. And like I said, I was a sophomore when that happened, and I basically tried everything on my own up through my junior year, and I interviewed with a few firms on my own. Eventually, nothing came out of that, and after the summer after my sophomore year, I figured it was time to make a change. If I really wanted to make this happen for my career, something had to change now, and I was basically willing to do anything to make it happen because I know the value of the investment banking career is more than basically anything else. So I was willing to do whatever it took. I joined the program, and basically everything turned around. Basically being way more methodical about everything I did, and I was basically able to use that to land the internship that I did for this coming summer.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. So there's a lot of stuff for us to dig into there, but let's just start from kind of the beginning. So you say you go to University of Minnesota. Obviously, not you guys aren't really a target. I know you guys have a business school, but you guys aren't really a target school, right?
Right. So I do go to the business school at University of Minnesota. Um, None of the big firms will recruit at my school. I had some recruiting from like local firms, but none of the bulge brackets or anything like that.
Got it. Okay. Um, and so you decided on investment banking sophomore year, which is kind of, and it's pretty normal. It's kind of when a lot of people start to find out about it. Initially, when you decided to um, kind of approach this process on your own, like how did you go about it, and like what were you doing to get these interviews? What were you doing to prepare for these interviews? Did you get any interviews? Like, talk to us about that initial process a little bit.
Yeah. So when I was a sophomore, like I said, I was going through the process on my own. Kind of what my technique basically looked like was kind of doing the same thing everyone else does, reading the guides. And I guess for even behaviorals, I didn't really have any process for that, just kind of figuring it out on my own as I go. That's basically how it went. So I did some networking. I probably reached out. I probably spoke with 20 to 30 people, really not a lot. It was enough for me to make a few good connections and get a couple interviews. I got a first round with one firm, totally bombed the technicals, and didn't get anything from there. I was like in an accelerated process for another firm that locally recruits for my school. I think just because I started networking with people early, I was in that. So I was kind of in the preferred candidate pool, and I got kind of earlier opportunity to do a super day, and I did make it to the super day, but I guess I didn't cut it, didn't get the offer at that point. And even though I was a preferred candidate, I just wasn't prepared. And these are like middle market banks near my school, and that's basically a process I was following kind of my sophomore year before joining Wall Street Mastermind.
Got it. So, middle market banks, more like regional banks that were in the Minnesota area, basically. So not like, probably not banks that most people would have heard of, essentially.
Yeah, mostly smaller banks, both middle markets, and near my school.
Okay. And you, at this point, having gone through those two, so those are the only two interviews you got, right? But at this point, you've gone through those two interviews. you didn't get the offer. Around what time frame was that, like summer of sophomore year at this point, or where were you at that time?
Yeah. So I had my first first round just I think it was as the semester was ending sophomore second semester sophomore year, right before the summer. I had a first round. So like I said, I bought my technicals. Nothing came out of that. I had an internship that summer, and like I said, did some networking, and that allowed me to get a super day with another middle market, and that happened. Um, I think beginning of August, and they had offers out by August, but I wasn't one of them.
Mm, I see. Okay. So I think, you mentioned you used the guides. What were the guides you used? Was it like Wall Street Oasis, Mergers and Acquisitions? Or
Um, yeah, so I mean, like you can read. Yeah, I think I kind of read those guides to get a sense of like what investment banking was, the kind of things they talk about. In
yeah.
terms of like what a technical study I actually did um, before joining Wall Street Mastermind, yeah, there's like the 400 questions guide, which I basically spent, gosh, I'm trying to remember, a lot of time on that. Like I probably put in 2 or 3 hours a day for like um, a month just reading through all those. And
Wow.
like, I could probably remember what like, hey, how to describe like a DCF or something, but there's really no conceptual understanding behind it, and that just doesn't work in investment banking interviews.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. So technicals were pretty shaky, and then your behaviorals, you were saying, I guess you didn't really do much on behaviors. You just kind of went in the interview and just winged it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it wasn't winging it, but I prepared beforehand, but I never did any mock interviews. I wasn't that methodical about it. I probably practiced a few times, but, I didn't like write it out. I didn't get it checked by anyone. So, I mean, I wouldn't say I winged it, but even kind of working through it on my own, that's just not enough to really be confident that you're going to do well.
Yeah. Got it. And then the networking conversations that you were having, the 20, 30 people that you spoke to,
Yeah.
first of all, like, how did you figure out how to network? Because a lot of students ask us, like, I don't know how to network, or I don't know where to start, right? So
Yeah.
how did you go about it, or how did you figure out your approach? And then, like, how, like, did it work well, or was it okay?
Yeah. So, I guess I basically did no networking until April of my sophomore year. And in April of my sophomore year, um, there was they call it like a career trek. So the school goes to like, we went to 5 firms in Minneapolis, and we went to all the middle market firms. And just from that, I was able to meet some people, make some connections, and um, I ended up grabbing some coffee with them in the coming weeks after that. And, I got basically a referral to another person to speak to, and that allowed me. I probably had, like I said, 20 or 30 conversations with like 5 to 6 firms, but basically, like I said, that kind of led me to getting 2 interviews. So basically, yeah, that's what my approach was. I wasn't too methodical about it. I wanted to like learn about the work they do, because
Well,
at that point I really didn't have that great of an understanding what investment banking was, but
well,
um, that's basically what my intention was, is just to learn about it. And I guess I made a good enough impression on a couple people to get a couple interviews, but basically I wasn't approaching it in a strategic way that I could actually consistently be getting referrals for the interview out of it.
got it. Got it. Okay. Makes sense. And so you basically almost entirely um, relied on just the school trek, um, to do all of your networking, basically. And outside of that, like, you didn't really have any contacts.
Yeah, so I mean, that's where it all kind of rooted from, and then eventually I met some people through those people, but
Yeah.
there wasn't really anything outside of that kind of train of like people that I talked to.
Got it. Okay. Um, so this is, like you said, April of your sophomore year. I think you actually first came across Wall Street Mastermind probably what, like December of sophomore year, like halfway through your sophomore year, right? That was when we first spoke.
Yeah, that's right.
Got it.
Uh,
And then at the time, we didn't start working together right away, obviously.
mhm.
Talk about that decision a little bit. Like, what went into your kind of decision making process, and what made you decide kind of not to not to jump in back then, and then to continue to try it on your own first?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's see. We're thinking back. So, December of my sophomore year, this is the
Yeah,
first time I reached out, and I guess I was trying to just learn more about the career. And
yeah,
um, I reached out to Wall Street Mastermind. Obviously, I spoke with you.
yep.
I guess kind of my thought process was, at the time, I actually wasn't sure if I wanted to do investment banking.
Mhm.
You probably remember this, but I told you about how I'm really close to my girlfriend, and the hours would be tough for us. And
Yeah,
basically, you talked me through how, like, uh, and kind of in any other career, it's going to be basically the same thing for a long time. But obviously, investment banking, it's an investment in your time. Just for if you can do it for 2 years, it's the payout can obviously be huge, and the exit opportunities are huge. And if you don't like it, that's totally okay, because
yeah,
like, first of all, you can't really know if you like it until you try it. But also, even if you can get in, if you don't like it, you can basically go anywhere else. And those are some of the things that you kind of talked to me about, and that got me kind of more in the mindset to kind of enter like start strategically trying to do recruiting for investment banking.
hmm,
So, at the time I was talking to you, I really wasn't all that committed to investment banking. And, it's important that people kind of get committed early. But I think, um, in that thought process, I really wasn't ready to commit my time
yeah,
to making it happen. And, whether or not I was in the program, if like you need to put in the time anyway, and I obviously
yeah,
wasn't doing that properly.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I guess that was kind of my thought process why I didn't join originally. But when I think back now, I think everything you said really uh, ring with me. And I
yeah,
think I actually reached out a couple months later, and I talked to you again. And that's when I was really more in a um, consideration mindset, really considering moving forward with the program as
mhm,
something to help me break into investment banking.
yeah,
And at that time, I had struggled a little bit. I basically couldn't land any internships, and I was getting worried about that. And I mean, like, relevant internships to get into investment banking. I was worried about that, and I just um, I wasn't willing to put in the resources necessary to make it happen. And
mhm,
obviously, I regret that, because I mean, I don't think there's any excuse for leaving the kind of opportunities that investment banking provides on the table. Like, I don't think, when I look back now, I don't think there's anything I wouldn't give for the position that I'm in,
mhm,
because, like, obviously it opens just so many doors. And there's really no reason that you should um, take a path of more resistance.
mhm.
Um, even no matter what it takes, there's really no reason you should take a path of more resistance when we're talking about literally the rest of your career, the rest of your life, and your future. And I think I started to realize that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you bring up a really good point, which is because we hear this a lot where people will say, they'll talk to us and they'll say, your program sounds great. Obviously, we have a bunch of testimonials, and um, they know that we get our clients results. But then a lot of people, maybe this is human nature, I don't know, but people tend to have this tendency to say, well, I want to try myself first, right?
Mhm.
I want to try myself first because what if I could get it on my own? Then I don't need your help, right? And so why invest in getting the help if I might not need the help? And so, I mean, what would you say to people who kind of have that mindset? I mean, you talked about the path of least resistance, but like, and I mean, obviously, I have a point of view on that, but I'm curious, like, what you would tell people like that, because sounds like you were in their shoes at one point too.
Yeah, I mean, like, guys, we're talking about the future that's gonna be like what determines your lifestyle for the rest of your life. And, like, sure, you can, like, try to go back and get an MBA later, but, like, obviously that's super expensive and direct cost and opportunity cost. And like, I really don't think there's any excuse for not not doing everything you can to get to the goals you want. So like, if it's really your the goal to become financially independent, financially stable, and be able to provide the kind of lifestyle you want for like your whatever it's your like husband or wife and your kids or whatever it is. um, I don't I don't think there's any reason that you should take chances on that kind of stuff. Um, Especially when we're talking, yeah, about something so important, and when we're talking about a process that works so well. Um, Obviously, I'm talking about Wall Street Mastermind. Um, you know, when you have the opportunity to make all that happen, and really, the investment is not that big. In the big scheme of things, I really don't think there's any reason. I don't think there's any excuse for you to risk the rest of your life because you want to see if you can do it yourself. Because like, dude, like, if you do it yourself, like, that's great, but come on, if you don't, you're like, you're always going to wonder, like, hey, what if I got the help, would I maybe be in a different place in my life? I mean,
Right.
like, that's just really not a place I want to be in. I don't think there's any reason you should take that kind of chance.
Right.
Something important as your future.
Right. Yeah, man. I mean, I think, I always tell people I think of this as an investment, right? Like working with Wall Street Mastermind is an investment. Um, and, if people truly approach this from an investment mindset, it's really, what all great investors do, like Warren Buffett or Ray Dalio or Carl Icahn. I mean, pick whoever you want, right? But all the best investors in the world, what they understand about investing is that um, if you're being completely logical about it and not emotional, because you don't want to invest emotionally, right? But if you're being very logical about it, what investing really comes down to is um, you're playing the odds, right? You wanna make bets where if you win, you're gonna win huge, you're gonna win big, right? But if you lose, you want to make sure that your downside is not that much, right? And so they call that asymmetrical investing, right? Which is, it's not to say that, I mean, even Warren Buffett or whoever, like, they don't make the right investments every single time, right? But that's not really the point of investing. The point of investing is not to never be wrong. The point of investing is to always make the right decision. Like, if the rewards are much greater than the risk, then you should make the bet. And then in the long run, you do that enough times, you're going to come out ahead, right? So then coming back to this particular investment, the way I think about it is, could you maybe get into investment banking on your own? Absolutely, right? Like, there's nothing is impossible. But when we objectively look at the statistics of people who actually get into investment banking, it's pretty much the top 1% or 2%, 3%, whatever you want to peg it at, but it's low single digit percentage points. That's how many people actually get in out of the entire candidate pool, right? So the chances of you just getting in as one of the top 1 or 2% of the candidate pool when you're just doing the same thing that everyone else is doing, or not to mention if you go to a non-target school, or you're starting later or whatever it may be, but like, the odds are stacked against you, right? And so to your point, like, I don't think anybody, if you when you think about it that way, nobody ever wants to um, only give themselves like a 2 to 3% chance of succeeding if succeeding means that, like, that's literally the difference between you having the type of lifestyle you want versus you not having the type of lifestyle you want. Like, because we're not talking about something insignificant, we're talking about probably one of the most important things that that you need to basically be
Yeah,
happy in life, right? It's like,
decisions you'll ever make. Yeah,
yeah, it's like the big three that I could think of are health, wealth, which I'll lump career in there, because really your career is going to be like the number one way for you to generate wealth, and then um, relationships, right? Like you mentioned, you're really close to your girlfriend, and like that's obviously super important as well. And so I totally respect that. But like those are the three things that anyone needs to have a really happy and truly satisfying and fulfilling life. And it's like nobody's ever gonna say like when it comes to these three things, like, yeah, I'm okay with a 1% chance of success. I don't think anyone would ever say that, right? But anytime somebody tells me like, hey, I'd rather try it on my own to see if I can get it first, as opposed to just doing it with you guys, Sam. Even though you guys, as of today, as the time of this recording, we're at about a 93% success rate. So I'd rather have a 1% chance of having everything I want in life versus a 93% chance. And to me, like that incremental 92% improvement on me getting what I want, how much you have to ask yourself, like, how much is that worth to you, right? Like, as from an investment standpoint, like, how much is that worth to you? Because if you were to ask me that question, um, that's worth like millions of dollars to me personally. And of course, like we're not going to charge people millions of dollars to work with us. Like we charge peanuts compared to, what you're ultimately getting out of this program, especially if you get the job. I just, right before we started recording this, I had another client that was messaging me on Slack, and he was literally telling me, he said, I mean, let me pull up his message just so I can read it because I don't want to misquote it. But he was actually asking me, hey, how do I start? Because he's starting to get offers for his summer 2021 for his junior summer internship, and a lot of banks are interested in him. He got a middle market offer already, but that firm like went really early, and he doesn't want to go to a middle market bank. So he started like contacting all the bulge bracket banks and trying to leverage that offer into accelerating. And then all these bulge bracket banks like Goldman, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, whatever, like Barclays, like they're all trying to accelerate his processes for him because they really like him. And then he started like, I think he's jumping the gun a little bit to be honest, but he was like, oh, so how does somebody start prepping for buy-side recruiting? Because he was thinking about like, hey, where do I want to go? What bank would I rather go to if like I want to do technology private equity afterwards, right? So he started asking me about buy-side recruiting. I'm going on a tangent here, but I basically told him, I was like, look, I'm probably going to launch a new program later this year for PE recruiting. And he got really excited about that. And he was like, yeah, let me know if you need any beta testers. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll let you know. Because I'm probably going to open it up to my own clients first and just give them first dibs. And he's like, yeah, that would be huge. Thanks, Sam. And he said, I honestly am already looking back at Wall Street Mastermind as the best investment I've ever made, right? And it's helped my investment in education actually come to fruition with the job. Like those are his words verbatim, not mine, right? And so like, coming back to what we're talking about, is just like, you've already probably made a huge investment in your education, or your family has, if not you. Like a lot of times your parents are the ones that are paying for it, right? A lot of you are paying probably well into the six figures to go to college for 4 years, right? A lot of you are maybe taking out tens of thousands of dollars of student loans just to be able to afford college, right? I speak to students like that all the time, and when you look at that investment that you've already made, it's like the reason you made that is because, or your family made that investment is because you believe that doing so will enable you to have a better career, right? Or to get a better job and make more money. And because if that wasn't the case, nobody would spend that type of money, right? And so this just goes hand in hand with that. It's like we're trying to help you maximize the return that you're going to get on your six-figure investment into your college education, right? And so no matter how you slice and dice it, it's like, if you believe that we can get you this outcome, then that should be worth a lot, right? It's like if you could graduate with a job that's making 125K right out of school, which is what a first-year analyst typically makes, versus the average college guy who's making $50,000 a year right out of school. I mean, that's life-changing, right? So anyway, I think that, you know, to be a successful person, I was talking about, to be a successful person, your mindset and your mentality, you have to think like a successful person, right? And I've never met a successful person ever who says, yeah, I think I'm gonna take the path of most resistance, right? Like, yeah, I know there's this better way for me to get to my goals, but I think I would rather take the more difficult way and just like try my luck, right? And so that obviously, I think is an important, it's an important lesson, and that's an important lesson and you went through this yourself, but then you came around and now you pass this on to other people. But I think that's one of the most important things for people to realize.
Yeah. Well, I think another thing to keep in mind is like, if you look at the research, we can look at like Stanford graduate school's business research of like, what's the value of like this investment banking career? And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You probably know this too, but I think, what is it, like 5-something million in present value terms for investment banking, in addition, compared to the average person.
Yeah,
So
what they did was they compared Stanford GSB grads that started their career in banking versus Stanford GSB grads that started their career in either consulting or entrepreneurship or the other
yeah,
popular business school destinations, right? And they found that the people that started in banking, on average, over the next 10 to 20 years of their career, made anywhere from $1.5 to $5.5 million more than their peers in present value.
yeah. So like, look, that's like present value. Like any way you look at it, like even, hey, let's be conservative. Like let's say like a million, which is, by the way, below any of the data, right? So
Right.
like literally, if you even just say a million, that's like present value terms. Like we're not talking about a million over your career, like literally a million today if you can get that job.
Right.
So like honestly, like if you analyze this as like Warren Buffett would, or as a financial analyst would, like I don't know, like you watching this, like if you like a finance or accounting major or something, but if you're going to go into banking, you got to know this stuff anyway. Is like analyze it as an investment. Like literally, like what's the NPV of this investment? Um, it's over like, I mean, if we're talking about $1 million conservatively present value, like we're talking like 990 something $1,000. Like
Well,
that's crazy in present value terms. Like literally, you can just like get handed that in present value terms because, dude, like compare that to like if you do it on your own. Like sure, like you can maybe make it happen, and like you don't have to invest any money. Like you're still gonna have to invest more time anyway.
yeah.
But like, come on, literally just analyze as an investment. Look at the ROI or the like and then
Yeah.
like maybe like for some people like you don't even have the cash to do it. um, if you're looking at investment that has an ROI that's like 10 times anything else, like you're not going to do it because you don't have the cash. That's just dumb. Investors don't think that way.
Right.
Like you can, I mean, you can think about it um like rich dad poor dad. Poor people say I can't afford it, rich people say how can I afford it, because they realize they can have anything they want, but they have to make it happen, not make excuses. Because like listen, like if you're in college, like you're an adult, you're probably taking on student loans anyway. Like there's no reason you can't do this program. And like we're literally talking about ROIs that are hundreds of times higher, and you can't do it because
Right.
like I
No,
think like
you're absolutely right. I mean, rich people get rich not off of their own money. They use what they call OPM, right? Which is,
other people's money.
yeah, it stands for other people's money. It's like, this is like real estate investors. They buy up all these properties using mortgages, which is loans that they got from the bank. Right? It's not their money, right? Um, and private equity firms, when they invest in companies, they're using debt that they're taking out to do these LBOs, right? They're not using their own money. And so it's the same concept, right? Just at a much micro level. You're absolutely right. And, we can even go a step further and say, using your conservative assumptions of $1 million, right, of present value, let's even like risk adjust that and probability weight it and say, well, there's no guarantee that you're going to get a job just because you work with Wall Street Mastermind, right? right? There's no guarantee. So if we just use our success rate today of 93%, you can discount the outcome by another 7% if you want. So instead of $1 million, it's $930,000. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? Like no matter how you look at it, it's one of the best investments you could ever make, right? And I think a lot of our clients feel that way, which is why they became our clients. And some of the people that choose not to, like, they're just not really thinking about it logically, you know. So anyway, but you ultimately, though, even though you didn't come into the program at the time,
Hmm.
then you went out, you struggled a bit on your own, and then you came back, I think around like November of
Yeah.
your junior year,
Yeah.
right? So at this point, pretty late in the recruiting process actually, because most of the big banks, they recruit between second semester sophomore year and the first semester
Yeah.
of junior year, and you came to us closer to the tail end of the first semester of junior year, right?
Right.
And you actually ended up paying for this program on your own, right? Like you didn't even, like, your parents didn't help you or anything like that. Like
Right.
you just bet on yourself. But then,
Hmm.
like, take us from that point forward. So like you joined late November. A lot of these firms probably already done recruiting and whatnot, right? Um, what happened from there then? Like what would you say changed when it comes to your recruiting process and how you prepared and how you went about it, just how you approach things in general?
Yeah. So, obviously when I joined the program, first thing, like, we revamped my resume, and that's really just a small thing, but when I sent off my resume, which, like, honestly looked incredible compared to anything else, I started getting a whole lot more networking responses. Like, that's one outcome that literally happened within like a few days. And I guess, it's being methodical about everything. Like, honestly, when I joined this program, I basically got the best resources that there are out there, like, period, better than anything else. So, like, there's, you know no reason why I wouldn't be able to get the job, because I literally had better resources than anybody else. So, my networking, I started really being more methodical about it, really networking. I probably reached out to, um, what I did was I put, some hours every day, and I tried to reach out to, like, um, maybe like 5 people every day.
Mhm.
And, over the course of the week, that's 35. Over the course of like 10 weeks, like, that's a lot of people. And I started having a lot of networking conversations, like
Yeah.
several every week. And, being able to understand, like, people think like, hey, networking conversations are like to learn about the company. Like, that's total BS. That's not what they're for. Like, you're networking with people so you can get an interview. Like, obviously you'll tell them like you want to learn about it. And to be honest, like, learning that stuff from people, like, what maybe actually help you in an interview. But the whole point of networking is to get an interview. Like, if we had the interviews without networking, like, we wouldn't have to network at all. So, like, I started being way more methodical about it, and I was able to land way more interviews, and I was um, able to really surprise people. And I could hear after I kind of told my story. So this kind of ties into, like, really making my behaviorals perfect too. After I told my story, like, tell them about myself, um, a lot of times they looked like, the look on their face was like they've never heard anything that good before.
Hmm.
um, and I'm sure it's probably not that different for most of the other clients.
Yeah.
Like, literally, like, I don't even know. They probably, like, talk to a bunch of people every week, and they just hear the same old stuff. But if you can really surprise them, like, they're willing to vouch for you. That's what started happening to me. Like, they just looked at me like, that's really cool. Like, that was really great to learn about. I learn about you like that. So,
Wow.
and then basically through the rest of the whole networking conversation, just because their first impression is really good, like, they're just like really free flowing. Like, they don't check their phone or anything. Like, they're really free flowing to me through the whole network conversation. And, like, I had people check their phone and, like, respond to emails on me, like, before I joined the program, because it was just so boring. Like, they're like literally responding to emails when I'm trying to ask them questions.
Yeah.
Like, that would never happen afterwards, because they're just so engaged, because you know exactly what to say to kind of um, target exactly what you need to target in terms of investment banking. And
Yeah.
that ties into like behaviorals too. Like tying in my behaviorals, like I think behaviorals is underrated for a lot of people. Like guys, like technicals, sure they're important, but like you're never going to get a job because of technicals. Like you get a job because you're the right person for the job, and that's all behaviorals. And in my case, like like I said, like I think we talked about this in the program, but like I literally get my behaviorals down in like 20. Got my technicals down in like 20 hours. Like it's just not a lot of time. It took me a couple weeks, and I was just ready for any technicals they threw at me, just because I understood everything.
Yeah.
Behaviorals actually took more time in my case, but I think that's probably how it should be, because behaviorals is what gets people the job, and a lot of people kind of approach it like I was when before I joined the program. But
Yeah.
uh,
That's really
like
interesting.
yeah,
Or not for me because I know, but for our listeners, it's very interesting to hear that you only spend 20 hours learning all the technicals, and then that was enough for you to feel really confident about it. And you actually spend the rest of your time networking, lining up these interviews, and also just like mastering your behaviorals. And that's where most of your time was going. Whereas most of the people, they're spending like hundreds of hours trying to learn these technicals, and that's all they're doing. And they're neglecting all this other more important stuff, which causes them to maybe not even get the interview in the first place because they're not networking the right way, or even if they get the interviews and like they know their technicals, but they just come off as this like boring candidate who sounds cookie cutter and just like everybody else, and they still don't get the job.
yeah. So like to be honest, I really don't think there's any reason like you need to spend any more time on technicals than like 20 hours or 25 hours if you do it right. Because like if you do it right and you really understand everything, really there's not that many concepts if you kind of just methodically work through it. Like there's not that much to it. You just have to understand it. But a lot of people just don't get that. So I understand why they're putting in all the 100 hours, because they're still not where they should be after those 100 hours, because they're not like utilizing the right resources and doing it in the right way. So like yeah, I guess like you probably do need to spend more time on technicals for most people because they're just not up to par, but really you should be doing it in a better way, not just doing more of it. And you really need to spend more time on more important things like networking and behaviorals.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whenever people hear us say like, "Oh, technical shouldn't take more than 20 hours,"
Like it sounds like like a scam, or like we're joking. It's literally not.
right, but well, it's kind of hard to believe based on their own reality because they know how much more time they've already spent on it, and they still don't feel like they understand it very well, right? So
Right.
it's just like, how is that possible? But the best way for me to explain it to everyone is just like, you're trying to learn technicals. It's kind of like trying to learn another foreign language, right? And if you were trying to learn a foreign language today, you could do what you're currently doing, which is go out, buy a textbook on French, buy a French textbook, and then memorize all the grammar rules and memorize all the vocabularies you can and spend hundreds of hours doing that. And at the end of that, you probably still wouldn't be able to put together like a very fluent, coherent sentence, right? Or maybe you could put together a couple of sentences, but you're not going to be able to have like this flowing conversation uh, with the French person, right? Versus if you were really serious about learning French, you probably would go find like a native French speaker to work with you and to speak the language with you on a daily basis and to teach you the language, as opposed to you trying to teach it to yourself by reading a book, right? Because it's not something that you can learn just from reading a book. It just isn't. And it's not something you're not really qualified to teach yourself because you don't know what you don't know, right?
Mhm.
And so when we say like, hey, you can learn everything in 20 hours, sometimes I hear people say, oh yeah, it should only take 20 hours. I'm sure I could just do that on my own, right? It's like, no, the caveat is like, only if you approach it the right way.
Mhm. Right.
So I think that's a really good point. But you came in, okay, so your networking conversations started going a lot better. Your behaviorals were amazing. You barely had to spend any time on the technicals. And so it sounds like as a result of all this, I'm guessing you started getting more interviews than you were before then.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty tough actually, just because of how late I was.
Yeah.
But I actually, when I think back, I got before I joined the program, like I said, I interviewed with 2 firms over the course of like 6 months on my own.
Yeah.
After I joined, within a month or 2, I probably had 6 interviews. Um, not all of them turned out, partially because I hadn't gone all the way through the program yet, and part of them was, um, I don't know, it was just other things. But I got to a few super days out of that, and then obviously got my offer. So everything started going a lot better, and obviously networking was a big part of that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was a big turnaround in terms of like the number of responses I was getting. Obviously, in terms of networking, I was talking to way more people.
Yeah.
I was getting way more responses on. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're not saying that, hey, if you do the program, then you're going to get every single interview and every single offer. We will never make a claim like that, right? We have had clients that have done that, but I would say, that's very, very difficult to do. But that's not really the point. The point is you just want to improve your chances. Like getting 2 interviews in 6 months means you're getting one, on average, 1 interview every 3 months, 1 interview per quarter, right? Versus getting 6 interviews in 1 to 2 months. Now you're getting, let's call it, even if it's 2 months, let's just say 2 months. That means you're getting 3 interviews per month, right? Which is really would have been 9 interviews per quarter if you extrapolate it out. And so you're getting 9 times as many at bats as you were previously, right? And so you just 9x'd your opportunity, or 9x number of at bats. And then what we always tell people is you just need to score 1 time, right? You just need 1 offer, right? And even if you didn't end up getting the offer that you ultimately got, we would have just kept going until you did get another offer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you did get the offer
Right.
eventually, right? After, it sounds like your 5th or 6th interview.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the offer that you got. Like, was it a pretty competitive process, and like, what type of offer was it? Like, were you happy with it? Like, whatever you're willing to tell us about it.
Yeah. So it was a special group in it's an industry specific bank, and they're like the top of they're the biggest, probably the most elite bank in their industry that they focus on. So like, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, whatever, like they have obviously this group too. But in terms of, if you just compare their group to my company, then my company is going to be the biggest one in that industry. So they're probably like the most elite bank in the industry. And I interviewed for a special group actually. So there was actually only 1 opening. And like, actually, a fun fact is I actually didn't apply for the opening. I got it through networking. So yeah, networking is pretty important. Yeah.
Well,
So
if you had applied, you probably wouldn't have gotten the interview, because it's the roles in New York, right? And you're in Minnesota, and nobody
yeah,
knows
of course.
who you are, and like.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
actually, I interviewed with people on the other firm's office, and when the position came up in New York, they knew about me, so they asked if I wanted to have an interview. So I didn't even apply. So that's just pretty cool, and that says something about obviously the success I had in my networking conversations, given that like they asked me to come in for an interview without applying. But yeah, so the process actually, like I said, there was 1 opening, and there was I don't know the exact number, but at least 200 candidates for that 1 opening.
wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Obviously I wasn't part of the interview, like team or anything like that, but they probably did first rounds with like 30, 40 people, and they probably had a super day with like at least 10 or 15 people.
Yeah.
And obviously I was the one who got the offer. So,
1 out of 200 is 0.5%, right?
right.
So we say most elite banks accept about 1% or less of their candidate pool, and this is pretty much in line with that, right? Like when I tell people, hey, most of these elite banks get 1 to 200 applications for every job opening that they have, like that's literally based on statistics that are publicly available.
Yeah.
It's not numbers that we're just making up, right? And so that's how competitive it is. That's why, like, when people say, yeah, well, I just want to see if I can do it on my own, you might be able to do it on your own. You might be that 1 out of 200 people, but why would you want to take that risk, right? And if you could have us in your corner and you could maximize like your chances of getting that job, because your behavior is going to be better, your technical is going to be better, your networking is going to be better, the way you prepare is going to be more efficient and more effective than the other 199 people. Why would you not want that, right? And ultimately, I mean, look, like whether they interviewed 30 people, 40 people, and then whether the super day was 10 people, 15 people, like didn't matter. It was one job. And I'm sure there were a lot of candidates that were at the super days who probably went to quote unquote better schools than you,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, like obviously I said I go to the University of Minnesota. It was in New York, so I'm sure they had at least a handful of people from target schools in their super days. But
Ivy League kids,
yeah,
Harvard, Wharton, Columbia, NYU, blah, 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 blah. Kids with great GPAs and stacked resumes and this and that. Like at the end of the day, though, like you beat all of them, right?
hmm,
Which, when you really step back to think about it, it's like, wow, it's pretty. that's pretty amazing. But that's why, like, now that you've been through that filter, like you're the top 1%, and now you get to have those things that everyone else wants but can't necessarily have, right? You get to have the six-figure salary when you graduate, you get to have the exit opportunities, you get to have the prestige associated with working at a top tier bank, or whatever other reasons or motivations people may have for wanting to do banking. But like that's like nothing, they say nothing good comes easy, and like this is the perfect example of that, right? Like
yeah,
you have to beat out so many people just to get here. So but anyway, that's an amazing story, man. Obviously, like super happy for you.
yeah,
Do you have any, just 'cause we only have a couple minutes left, but do you have any last minute advice for people who are listening, like maybe people who were in a similar or are in a similar situation as where you were before? Like maybe they go to a non-target school, or maybe they um, start a little bit later, or maybe they like either are considering just doing it themselves, or maybe they've already tried to do it themselves for a while. um, what would you tell people, or what do you wish someone had told you back when you were in their shoes?
yeah. So like I know everyone says this, but no one's listens. Like no, everyone says this, but no one listens to the people that say it, and is like, I wish I started earlier. Everyone says that, but then when people hear it, they're just like, yeah, okay. But like seriously, if you like, with the kind of resources that I got in this program, like I don't think there's any reason I wouldn't have gotten to it like a bulge bracket or elite boutique kind of a year back, just because I would have had so much time.
Yeah,
Like, you know, guys, like you want to have so much time, and you want to be prepared like as much as possible over that time. So like, hey, if you have a lot of time, I don't think that's a reason that you should risk it and try it yourself over that time. And that's obviously a mistake I made. But if you have a lot of time, then like that's the perfect opportunity for you to take advantage of the best resources and get ahead as much as possible, and literally get the best outcome possible.
yeah,
So I guess in my case, like um, you know, feedback or kind of advice that I would give people um, outside of kind of joining Wall Street Mastermind, which I think obviously um, can obviously have some great benefits. Like um, I think that's something everyone should consider, obviously, if this is something that's important to you. But like, just like be methodical about it. Like stop like trying to memorize technicals. Stop trying to like just make up behaviorals. It doesn't work. Like you got to be like with a process that's competitive, you have to be really methodical about it and making sure that you're at that 10 out of 10 position.
yeah,
Because there's, you know, if you try hard and you do it on your own, like you might be able to be like good, but good doesn't cut it. Like you need to be best of the best to get the job.
Yeah.
So I think, you got to do everything you can to be in that top bucket. And obviously, the program, that's exactly what we do.
Yeah.
We do for us. But I mean, that's my advice in general.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, man. That's really great advice. So thank you for that. I mean, look, guys, we only have a few minutes here, so we're gonna wrap up. But in closing, I would just say, um, there's no reason for you guys to struggle on your own first, before you then do the thing that is gonna help you accomplish your goals. Okay. I think what I always tell people is, like, the sooner you land the offer, and Daniel is alluding to this as well, but based on the way the recruiting process is, the recruiting timeline works, typically the best banks get filled up first, right? So the earlier on in the process that you can get an offer, typically the better the offer is going to be. Like, as the date of this recording, it's April 2020. Like, I had a client that just got an offer from PJT for summer 2021, which is 14, 15 months away. Most people don't even have an offer yet. They're just starting to recruit. But like, the best banks, the ones that are the hardest to get into, the ones that pay the most, the ones that the most prestigious, have the best exit opportunities, like, they typically just choose the candidates they want first, and then they're pretty much done recruiting. Right? Like, I heard PJT's done recruiting at this point. So you can try on your own first, and then, like, you can come back to it later, and then we might still be able to help you, we might not. But like, even if we were able to help you, whatever results we do get for you is not going to be as good as what we would have been able to get for you initially. Right? That's just a fact. There's nothing we can do about that. It doesn't matter how good we are. Right? The other thing um, that Daniel mentioned that I thought was really on point is, he said, he would tell everyone to start early. Right? So I think that if you kind of view recruiting as a race, like you're running a race against, all the other students out there who are in your class, also trying to get the same job, um, there's really only two ways to win a race, right? One is you start running before the other people start, right? Like, you kind of jump the gun. And that's one, which is what Daniel's talking about, is like, start as early as you can. But not everyone can do that. Sometimes, like, for a lot of you, by the time you realize you want to do banking, you notice that your peers have already started like months ago, or sometimes years ago, right? Because they knew they wanted to do banking way before you. So the other way to win the race is if you are a faster runner than your peers, rather than your competition. Like, if you can run faster, even if you started later, you can catch up to the people you're racing against, and you can surpass them. Right. And that second part is kind of where we come in, which is like, we're kind of like the rocket fuel. We're like the, the people who can give you that boost that you need. So that, before, if you're running a 7-minute mile, 8-minute mile, now we're going to help you run a 4-minute mile. Right. And you're going to be able to accomplish so much more in the exact same amount of time as your competitors, because you guys all have 24 hours in a day, right? And that's how you're going to win, right? And if you go to a non-target school like Daniel does, if you go to like University of Minnesota, for investment banking recruiting purposes, that's like you're running this race and you're starting from lane 6, right? The Harvard, Wharton, Columbia, NYU kids, they're starting in lane 1. They're on the inside track, right? They don't have to run as hard as you to finish this race, right? So that's even more reason for you to figure out how you can gain a competitive advantage and get a leg up on these people, right? So if that makes sense to you, and if that's something that you're looking for, then I would encourage you to go and book a strategy session with our team. Okay, you can do that by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And what we'll do is we'll hop on the phone with you for an hour. We'll try to learn more about your situation, really get to know you as a candidate, understand what your goals and aspirations are, as well as what challenges you're currently having in accomplishing the outcome that you want, right? And based on what you tell us, like if we can help you, we're absolutely happy to, kind of tell you what that might have to look like or how we would do that and how we will get you to your goal. But even if we can't help you, happens sometimes, but if we can't help you, like we'll do our best to still, at a minimum, just give you advice on what we think we would do if we were in your shoes. Okay. So at a minimum, again, this call is free. At a minimum, you can walk away from this call with some actionable advice that you can just go implement on your own. But best case scenario, like we're a great fit, um, and we're going to help you completely change the trajectory of your career, right? So this could be one of the best calls that you ever decide to take. So again, go to wallstreetmastermind.com/apply, and we look forward to speaking with you guys. So with that, Daniel, I want to thank you for again spending an hour with us today to talk about your experience. Super insightful for our listeners, I'm sure, and there's a lot of good advice that you dropped on people. And congratulations again on the offer that you got. It's obviously a great
Thank
accomplishment.
you. Yeah.
Can't wait to see what you do this summer.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome, man. Well, guys, that'll be it for today. And we'll be back with a lot more of these in the coming months as we go through this recruiting cycle. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.